Hello everyone, welcome to Anime No Mi, and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. In today's video, we're going back to our videos of battles between One Piece characters, where we compare their skills and comment on who would be able to win if there was a confrontation between them. Today we're going to talk about the battle that will decide the title of who will be the greatest swordsman in the world. And of course, we're talking about the battle between Dracula Mihawk against Roanoa Zoro. If you're new to the channel, we really appreciate your help by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It really means a lot and motivates us to make new videos. But for now, let's get into the video. Mihawk and Zoro are great rivals, as Zoro's objective has always been to defeat Mihawk and obtain the title of greatest swordsman in the world. But as we know, this will not be so easy since Mihawk is extremely skilled. We will begin by comparing their fighting styles and abilities, and then we'll talk about who could have an advantage during combat. After all, Zoro is still looking to finally fulfill the promise he made to his childhood friend. Zoro uses the Santoryu technique during combat, which is the use of 3 swords, using 1 sword in each hand and holding the 3rd sword in his mouth. This exclusive technique of Zoro's proves to be very effective, capable of delivering extremely powerful strikes to his enemies. With the perfection of this technique, Zoro was even able to create another technique derived from Santoryu, the technique of Ashura, or 9-sword style. Ashura could be considered an extension of Zoro's spirit, where he manifests an illusion that triples Zoro's potential as a swordsman. Through this technique, Zoro becomes a swordsman with 6 arms and 3 heads using 9 swords. Currently, little is known about the exact nature of this fighting style, as it's only been used against Kaku, Indigo, Pacifista, and Kaido so far, so there is a high probability that this will become one of Zoro's most powerful techniques. But even with what little we know about Zoro, let's be honest, we actually know even less about Mihawk. Thus far, we've only seen him use Yoru and a smaller sword to launch quick attacks, so Mihawk's fighting style can be linked to Itoryu or 1-sword style. However, unlike Zoro, Mihawk's style with a sword is much more powerful, able to deliver much faster blows even while carrying a giant sword. During his first confrontation with Zoro, Mihawk easily defeated him, giving him a quick and crushing defeat, as Zoro was not even able to touch him with his sword, yet his pride was not broken. As we know, Zoro during that conflict was very inexperienced at the time, having only fought against weak enemies, and he did not yet know the secrets and dangers that were hidden across this vast sea. So during his journey, he focused on strengthening himself, learning several new techniques, and acquiring new and more powerful swords so that one day he could overcome Mihawk. During the time skip, Zoro ended up being sent to Kurigana Island and asked Mihawk to train him, not to one day overcome Mihawk, but to protect his friends. Mihawk reluctantly accepts his request and warns him it would not be easy, but Zoro remains firm in his decision. 2 years after training with Mihawk, we see that Zoro had gotten a lot stronger, but he still wasn't enough to defeat Mihawk, so he joins back up with his friends to find new adventures. As we've seen in the current Wano arc, Zoro has become even stronger, being able to even cut the almost invincible Kaido, who is the strongest and most resistant Yonko today. This great feat could mean that Zoro is getting closer and closer to being able to defeat Mihawk. If Zoro perfects or even expands his Ashura technique, there's a great chance that he'll be able to fight Mihawk, especially if Zoro masters Conqueror's Haki and applies it to his sword strikes. Like Luffy, Zoro was able to unconsciously use his Conqueror's Haki to cut Kaido with his sword, so with further practice, who knows what Zoro would be capable of with full mastery of his Conqueror's Haki. But it's also worth noting that this still wouldn't be that easy, because before becoming the greatest swordsman, Mihawk fought and defeated several powerful enemies, so we really don't know the full extent of his abilities. After all, Mihawk competed for this title of best swordsman with Shanks, who is currently a Yonko, so Mihawk could not live up to his title without having an incredible mastery of swords, in addition to having very powerful Haki. So far, it has not been revealed if Mihawk also has Conqueror's Haki, but having been a rival of Shanks in the past, there's a great possibility that he does have this power, since facing an advanced Haki user like Shanks would be incredibly difficult without that ability. As we've learned with Luffy's fight during Kaido, if you face an enemy who coats their attacks with Conqueror's Haki, even with Armament Haki, it's practically impossible to do any damage. Now, it is unknown if Shanks possessed advanced Conqueror's Haki and used it with his sword fights against Mihawk, but if he really did, then there is a possibility that Mihawk could possess it as well. So when it comes down to it, Zoro and Mihawk could be very similar in power level, because both have incredible techniques used against Yonkos, so the fight would end up being really decided by the one who has the greatest mastery of the sword. Whoever possesses the most powerful style would win. It is also worth remembering that the swords they are using in combat could also have an influence, as a simple sword would not be able to compete against a very strong sword. Mihawk, as we know, has Yoru, a large cross-shaped sword capable of cutting its targets even if it is a great distance away. We saw the cutting ability of this sword during the confrontation in Marineford. Mihawk was able to slice through an immense iceberg with just one slash of his sword. He also was able to slice the battle field in half just to measure the distance between him and Edward Newgate. Yoru stands out for being able to make cuts at a great distance, but the short distance doesn't seem to be so effective because of its enormous size. With just one slight, its user could lose the fight, and very close combat could put Mihawk at a disadvantage. However, because Mihawk has used this sword for an incredibly long time, he would probably have great control over it to be able to easily reposition himself and deliver quick and lethal blows to his enemies. In addition, his eyes are able to see the movements of his enemies, and he is able to predict their movements. This would enable Mihawk to land the blows in places that his enemies would pass. Even though Mihawk's eyes haven't been revealed to have a special power, it is his experience in combat that allows him to adapt and be able to see the steps of his opponents. Yoru is considered a supreme grade sword, being then one of the 12 most powerful swords ever created, possessing incredible cutting power and amazing durability, being practically impossible to break. Now, Zoro, over the course of his journey, has upgraded his sword several times, but the one sword that has been his constant has been the Wado Ichimonji, one of the 21 great grade swords, and the masterpiece of the legendary blacksmith Shimotsuki Kozoburo. This sword once belonged to his childhood friend Kuina, who he vowed to become the greatest swordsman in the world to fulfill their dream, so he carries this sword as proof that he will one day fulfill it. The Wado Ichimonji doesn't seem to have anything special, but it is one of the rarest and well-built swords in the world, so its durability and cutting strength are much greater than most swords. Zoro also carries the Sandai Kitetsu, the third of the Kitetsu swords created by Tenguyama Hitetsu. The Sandai Kitetsu could be considered the weakest of all the swords that Zoro currently has, and may possibly be exchanged for a better one in the future. The Sandai Kitetsu is considered a grade sword, therefore it would have less durability than the others, but it is unique because it is said to contain a curse that can cause the wielder to suffer a horrible death. However, through a test in which Zoro throws the sword up and puts his arm out so that the sword will fall in his arm, we see the Kitetsu didn't cut him after falling, proving that he was more powerful than the sword's curse. It is unknown if the Sandai Kitetsu possesses a special technique, but for now, Zoro has chosen to keep it, because despite the curse, only Zoro seems to be able to use that sword. And lastly, we have Enma, which is one of Kozoburo's masterpieces, and one of the 21 great grade swords. Enma has the special ability to drain a user's armament haki, and is one of only 2 swords that ever hurt the Emperor Kaido. While not of the highest rank among the swords, it is shown to be extremely powerful, being able to cut through a cliff with just one movement of its wielder. But as I said before, even though the sword is powerful, it does come with a big disadvantage. This sword absorbs the haki of the user, which gradually makes him weaker throughout the fight as it progresses. So it is necessary that the sword wielder has an incredible control over their haki, so the sword does not completely drain their life. Zoro still needs to learn how to control the flow of his haki so that he can use Enma without it weakening him quickly during combat. But Zoro may be able to turn this great disadvantage into one of the biggest powers of this sword. The more haki the user puts into it, the stronger his attacks become. So with perfect control over his haki, Zoro would be able to defeat his opponents easily. So with all that in mind, Zoro might be able to fight on equal footing against Mihawk today. But deciding who will be the winner is something difficult to know, because we still don't know Mihawk's full potential. But for now, I would love to know your opinion about the video. Who do you think would win if Zoro and Mihawk were to fight? Will Zoro ever be able to get a new sword in the future to overcome Mihawk's Yoru? Leave your opinion in the comments. We'd also like to thank you so much for watching the video all the way to the end. Comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, if you've made it this far, give us a like as you head out to take on the rest of your day. Hope to see you in our next video, and let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.